the journey that we've all been through, kind of the anxiety, the hope that we hope that should be coming. Maybe talk about how we can become determined to move forward. And this is kind of me trying to get the promise of AI going here. These chickens represent the promise of AI, and that's me, the Yorkie, running around, and I can't quite seem to I know it's there. I know the payoff is there somewhere. I know the ROI is there, but it's a challenge, and I may not get there for a while. So I hope I hope most of you don't really feel like that, but if you do, then you've got a kindred spirit here. About 52% of Americans use AI platforms every week. So let me ask you, if you use AI every month, once a month, who uses AI at least once, some AI tool once a month? How many of you use it at least once a week? Okay, how many of you use it multiple times a day? How many of you basically have robots and agents working for you right now while you're here at home? Yeah, quite a few of you. It's really become kind of an amazing thing, and I'm honestly shocked at this SRSS research. I guess like if you work in a warehouse or you're tending bar or flipping burgers, maybe you don't need an AI platform for work, but a lot of us do. So you're probably familiar with with these platforms here. The 6 most common LLMs are ChatGPT, Google Gemini, represented here, and these are kind of one-off. Now, I would admit, and you can tell that this was written by Claude because it excluded Grok but included Perplexity. So these are individualized agent or AI tools, but what we're going to talk about today are orchestration frameworks. There's a lot of kind of difficult terminology out there right now. Orchestration frameworks is one of those terms that can be a little bit hard to get your head around. There's another one, it's called harnesses. And if you're familiar with that term, that's another one that people kind of struggle to think about. And then there's, several other terms that are commonly used, misused, and abused. I think what's interesting about orchestration frameworks is that these frameworks are designed to essentially corral the AI that you're working with. So by a show of hands, I'm not going to go through all these, how many of you have used OpenClaw? Have an OpenClaw working for you? A few of you. How many of you use Paperclip? Anybody here? I got one colleague back there with Paperclip. We're going to be talking tonight about BMAD method. And BMAD is one of these orchestration frameworks, and I would just encourage you to kind of consider one of these as your starting point. One of the things that has been pointed out over and over again, I think probably through most of our tech careers, is that these tech innovations come in waves, and they do not all of the waves crest. Some of the waves never really form, but we're surfers out there on our surfboard looking back at the waves, and we're deciding which ones we're going to surf. And if we choose wisely, then we'll have a good performance. We'll make it to the shore. If we do not, then we're going to waste a lot of time, and we're going to have to paddle back out, and hopefully we still have enough gas in the tank to get out there. I think an interesting point to me is that these particular frameworks are essentially the wave that I have decided to surf. And I think it's a really good wave. I think this wave is going to produce really, really good results for us. It's something that I talk about in my book. My book was published before Agentic frameworks were really very common. We had Claude Code. I published it back in December. We had Claude Code at that point, which we were using as a company extensively. We continue to use extensively as it's improved. But there are also others that have come forward since then and have really matured. Some of them were really, really bad at that point. BMAD, for example, the one we're talking about tonight, back in December, was not really a very good platform to work on. So now I use it on a really team-wide on a daily basis. I think that the spoils go to the victor, or in this case, those who battled out and catch a wave, and not those who sit at the shore watching the wave. So hopefully you'll take a little bit of inspiration if you're not already on one of these, on the Agentic wave, to choose an entry point and get on, and maybe BMAD will be that one for you. I'm going to talk about, so what is BMAD? So BMAD, there are a lot of ways that they justify the name, but the name comes from Brian Madison. He's the guy that actually created BMAD, and so it's called BMAD. And he has encoded the entire software development life cycle into an actual agent. Everything from ideation, long before we talk to developers, all the way down through implementation. And the first phase of that is analysis. The second is defining what to build. And there are a few short steps from that. And don't get too caught up in the details of the small print here. I have this on here really more for reference if you're familiar with it, but we're gonna see those in action in just a minute. But then deciding how to build it, architecting it, making the technical decisions where the software is going to be hosted or how it's going to be formed, etc. And then building it story by story. So one of the purposes of BMAD as an agentic platform is that it takes your ideas and helps you form them into documentation that is well written for coding agents to produce really good, robust code. Has anybody here ever tried working with a coding agent, and as you prompt your way through the software development life cycle, thank you, sorry. As you prompt your way through the software development life cycle, the results have been like less than impressive? You ever get to a point where you're rethinking something and you go back and then you try to implement something new and it wipes out your entire database? Has that ever happened to anybody? If you've used Lovable or DataButton or some of those systems, you're probably familiar with that story. And BMAD helps avoid that because it's actually documenting in extreme detail, not only as you go, but it's documenting for the agents themselves, for the agents that are going to be implementing the code later on. So it makes sense that an AI would do a really good job at preparing documentation, not only for sign-off from the business folks, the product folks, but for implementation by the coding agents. All right, I've talked enough about that. So let's actually take a look at what it is. So what I have loaded on the screen right now is a piece of software called Cursor. Anybody here use Cursor in your daily business? I think it's a great IDE, especially if you're working with software agents. But it's just a place to store some files over here, and I've actually included a very, very small file. So tonight we're going to be writing a piece of software, and when I say tonight, over the next 10 minutes, we're going to be writing a piece of software where we're tracking expenses. So instead of tracking them on a spreadsheet, where approvals can get lost, reports are manual, we're going to actually create like a little app for that. Now, I do not promise that we're going to implement it tonight. I'll be honest, this is one that I'm doing this literally for the first time. So you're seeing this document, which I asked Grok to create just for this occasion, this evening. And I'm going, and I'm in, as you can see in my file manager here, I just have this one file. That's all that's in there right now. There's nothing else here. It's just sitting there. And again, I'm using Cursor, which if you're not familiar with, it's similar to Claude Code, which allows me to then implement agents. So I'm going to run through the process, fingers crossed that the Wi-Fi is working properly, and where I just install, oops, sorry, and this is as techie as it gets tonight. So we're just going to npx BMAD method install, and it should start, oh look, asking me a few questions about how I want to proceed with it. But all I'm basically doing is downloading some information from the internet, and it's going to configure it for me. And you're going to notice that that it's telling me, hey, what is BMAD? So it's this agile AI-driven development. It's got some connections that you can make, etc. And it's asking me where I want to install it. So I'm just going to go and install to the default directory really quick. It's asking me how much of this I want to install. And I'm going to install, and basically all I'm doing is like hitting arrows in my space bar. I'm going to install everything except for the Game Dev Studio so that I can show you some stuff. Since we're not developing a game, there's no reason for that. And it's going to go along its merry way. I don't want to browse the community modules yet. I'm not installing anything. Here, I'm just deciding which IDE to use. So to be honest, this works really, really well in Claude Code because Brian Madison works in Claude Code, but we're working in Cursor because I think this is what my devs work in Claude Code for the most part, and my business folks, so my product people at my company tend to work in Cursor when we're working on a BMAD project together. So I'm gonna have the agents call me Tim to honor Tim, and we're gonna keep going through here, just choosing the defaults, and it really takes just a moment to go through the files, and I'm hoping, again, fingers crossed, oh, there we go. Got to the next step, asking me to do the express setup, and then it's going through this. Now you're gonna start seeing over on the left here, you're gonna start seeing files trickle in. So it's installing some files. It's gonna install several things, but none of it is actually what we would consider code or software. These files are all instructions for agents. They're markdown files. You can easily read them. Most of them are very understandable. So it's super easy to look under the hood of BMAD and see what's going on. And we're done. We're installed. So you're going to see some of these files installed over here. I'm just going to take a look at one of the agents really, well, actually, they don't call them agents anymore. They've gone with skill, which has become like the more acceptable form of that. But let me just show you what this looks like. So this is a typical skill. It's written in English. I'm not going to read over it, but it basically tells you what to do when you're asked to perform this program. Now, I already have the expense tracker doc installed in here, and I'm going to ask it to, I can either call an agent specifically if I want to use a particular agent. I use like /, and I can have it do pretty much anything I want it to do. I've got some new options in there. All of those skills are here under this cursor /skills. so you can see what all the skills are that you have, so if you forget the name. But even if you forget the name of the skill, it doesn't really matter because, and I'm going to put down the microphone for just a second, and you'll see that I'm going to tell it that I just want it to start the ideation process. We want to develop software based on this file that I have already loaded in here. So we're going to hold on just 1 second. Work through, use the BMAD method to start creating this file, or to start creating the software. And I want to start with ideation. And now it's planning its next moves. And the only thing I had to do, because I did not invoke a specific BMAD agent, I could have and I chosen to, is I'm relying on the cursor Uber agent to decide which agents to implement. So hopefully this won't take, it's taking longer than expected. Oh, that's good news, isn't it, for live demos? But it's going to decide how to implement it, and as you can see that, it's already figured out what it's going to do. It's looking through the expense tracker AMD file, it's going to figure out what we're creating, and it's going to start walking us through the process. And the reason that we need something like BMAD is that, if anybody's noticed, the time that it takes a developer to actually write code has diminished greatly if they're using any sort of software and intelligent agent, and the bottleneck has moved. Anybody here ever read Eliyahu Goldratt's The Goal? Anybody familiar with that book? Some of the older guys here, my age, might be. It has to do with the theory of constraints. And it basically says that when you have a system that has a constraint or a bottleneck, and you relieve that bottleneck, it's going to create a bottleneck somewhere else in the system. And from a software development standpoint, and from my perspective, the bottleneck has effectively moved from developer time and software developer time over to, it's not all the way there yet, but over to the product and the business side. So it's actually more difficult now to spec out a project, especially if you want to do it, if you want to implement it with AI, it takes a lot more time on the product people, and so the devs, they're sitting around playing frisbee, picking up, severe coffee habits. They're engaging in all kinds of bad behavior. Records are being set on World of Warcraft, things like that. While the product people are over there trying to keep up with the developers now. And it used to be the opposite way. And the entire Agile system was set up assuming that the developer would be the bottleneck. So now we're having to reconsider that. So you can see it's gone through, and I'm not going to read through all this because we're going to do very quickly, but it has created some documents for us, and it's the primary document here is this thing called the PRD, or the Project Requirements Document. And if I can make this a little bit wider here and put it in preview mode, oops, key file. Let's look at this as preview mode. It's already gone through and done most of the planning process. Now, I had to do that and speed through it for today's, but you can interrupt it. You can tell it, do it one step at a time. I want to review everything, which is normally the way I would do it, the way I recommend doing it. But it can do a very passable job, actually a better job than some of the clients I've worked with, to specify and explain what we're trying to do. And so it's created an executive summary, it's created a product scope, It's actually developed user journeys to things that you would do on the product development side, and it's gone through all these domain requirements. So you can see that it's documented this thing out pretty well, and we're kind of almost done with this process at this point because it's just saying, hey, let's validate the BRD. And as we're asking it to validate the BRD, it's starting up its next round. Now, the beauty of BMAD is that it's not really constrained by a context window. Most of us are constrained by a context window as we're creating or developing software because we're doing it directly within the LLM. Whereas BMAD, at each step along the way, is creating, again, that very specific documentation that the developer bots, or the developer agents, are going to need in order to implement it. And we're going to stop right after this particular step is done, but it's actually got agents validating the PRD. Yeah. Yeah, Tim, I'm almost done here. So it's going through step by step, it's testing, and it's planning its next moves. And then you'll notice that it has agents that have specific recommendations and specific roles, and it's implementing those roles, and they criticize each other's work as it goes through the process. This creates a validation report now that gives me options if there are problems with the PRD to address all of those. Once I get through addressing those, which I can have it do, if there's research that needs to be done, I can ask it to do product research. It will do all of those items for me. Now, the last thing that I want to do, and here I'm just going to kind of move on to the next thing, but if we have 1 minute, when we get through to the next stage, I'm going to introduce what's called party mode. And party mode pulls on some of the agents. So it has agents that are product people, research people, they're a CTO, there's a developer. There's about 42 different roles that are built into BMAD that would be built into your company. And when you get to a point where you need to review the documentation, BMAD is going to pull the people into a meeting and actually have each of those folks review folks. I'm calling them folks. They're agents. Isn't that? It's wrong. I know. Like I feel like they have names. There's like John and Sarah, and like it actually has names on there. But I want to say, if it will allow me, so it'll go to the point where it wants to create a UX design, and I'm going to say, go into party mode to make sure we haven't missed something. And hopefully it'll do this for us. If not, then when you get home and you install BMAD on your own, then you'll be able to use party mode. And I teach organizations, how and when to use the various agents here, how to implement BMAD in their organizations. And I will tell you that the comments about party mode usually start with, I'm obsessed with it, and here's why. So we're down to the end here. I don't know if it's going to get through its next moves. This is always it may be a bandwidth issue, but it seems to be thinking a lot harder on this little expense app than I expected. So what I'll do is I'll defer this. I'm going to keep this going. And so afterwards, I'll find a place to sit. And if anybody wants to kind of sit down and go through the rest of it with me and just take a look at it, or has any questions about it, we can go through there. But you can see now it's actually figuring out who to bring into the party. It's going to bring Mary, Sally, Winston, Murat in there. And it's going to do an entire gap analysis for us. So that's a very, very quick intro to BMAD, and I hope that you found it somewhat useful. I will note that if you would like a copy of my book, you can actually get an electronic version of that for free if you use the QR code on the left. And if you would like to connect with me on LinkedIn, use the QR code on the right and just tell me that we met here, and I will be ecstatic to invite anybody into my LinkedIn circle as if that were some sort of an honor for anybody. But I would encourage you to take a look at what's going on in Agentic AI. Understand, and hopefully you'll see why I believe this is a wave that is worth riding. It's going to provide value for quite a bit of time. This is part of the build out for the type 1 thinking, and it will help us to create a lot of value over the next few years. I believe we've got few. If anybody says few years, of course, I don't have a crystal ball, but it appears to me that this is going to take us a while to really just eat the entire sandwich.